Good evening, Mayor, Nigerian council members, and the viewing audience. My name is Mike Mohill. A couple of weeks ago, I presented a PowerPoint of the City of Glendale's pension system, where firefighters and police officers' retirement benefits after 30 years of service would be 90% of their last year's bloated salary for life. Management benefits of 75% of their last year's salary bloated, and for life, by the way, and general employees' retirement benefits of 60% of their last year's bloated salary for life. I also stated it would cost the taxpayers today $1.4 billion to terminate our CalPERS retirement program. Councilman Friedman immediately said, "This is not what current employees are receiving." Her eyes moved to our city manager, Ochoa, to explain. Mr. Ochoa made one of his usual off-the-cuff snide remarks and proceeded to state our unfunded pension debt obligation was not $1.4 billion, as I have been saying numerous times this year. Mr. Ochoa stated our pension debt was only about $400 million. And implied this was not a great deal of money. Mr. Ochoa failed to identify what the about $400 million plus represented. This $400 million plus pension debt is only for the already retired employees. The $1.4 billion is the amount of pension debt for already retired employees, plus the debt obligation of our current 1,300 working employees. Additionally, we have $225 million unfunded debt for a Cadillac post-employee health insurance plan for current retired employees who continue receiving this health plan till age 65 when Medicare kicks in. A total of over $625 million unfunded debt and still growing for just current retirees employees. Mr. Ochoa further bragged about the relatively new two-tier age requirement of 50 or 55, and this could also be extended to a third tier. However, our city manager failed to mention that no matter how many tiers he thinks is financially prudent, our union employees will still be receiving 90%, 75%, and 60% of their last year's salary as their bloated pensions for life. Folks, this is the information Mrs. Freedman could or would not tell the public a couple of weeks ago about our current employees' salaries and pension benefits, and had our city manager take the heat. Mrs. Freedman has approved every water and electric rate increase, approved transferring every year millions of dollars from GWP to the general fund, and approved increasing old fees and creating new fees. Is it true, Mrs. Friedman, since you became a councilwoman in 2009, you no longer produce movies or go to swap meets to sell your artifacts? Is it true, before you were elected to council, your husband, Guillaume Lemon, worked as an employee for landscape architect Larry Tyson, and since your election, your husband formed his own landscape business? Is it true, since you were elected, for every one of those ugly mega apartment complexes for which you voted in downtown Glendale was money in the bank for your husband's firm? Is it true that the developer Mark Nathanson and architect Efren Oliveras uses your husband's landscaping firm for many of their projects in Glendale and throughout Southern California? If I am wrong about any of these questions, I just ask you, now is the time to tell the public I am wrong. Having taken good care of developers, architects, government unions, and helping her husband secure work, Councilman Friedman would like to be your next 43rd Assembly representative. Thank you.
Well, since the questions were asked, you are wrong. My husband does not work for Mark Nathanson. He's not worked for any of the developers who have built in the downtown that I'm aware of. I don't believe he's worked for Efren Olivares, although he has worked for homeowners who have used Efren as an architect, who have separately hired my husband. That's possible. But he has not worked for Mark Nathanson, Mr. Mohill. If you have any evidence of that, you can please let me know. I don't know where you're getting this from. He hasn't worked for any of the downtown developers. He's primarily a residential landscape architect who does a lot of work for people in Glendale, people in Altadena, Pasadena. He's done a lot of work in Brentwood, some work in Hancock Park. I'd say most of his projects are not even in the city of Glendale. He did used to work for an architect named Kathy Serra. He's never worked for Larry Tyson. So you're getting this all very confused. Since you're wondering, my husband used to be a film editor. He went back to UCLA, got a degree in landscape architecture. After that, he worked for a couple of landscape architecture firms, and he did start his own company. And I'm very, very proud of him for building that company through the recession until now. And the reason his company is successful is because he is an extremely talented landscape architect. And I may be biased, but I believe that, and so do his clients. His business comes primarily through word of mouth. If you want to talk to some of the people in Glendale that he's worked for, in case you're looking for someone to replace the turf in your yard, he does that very, very well, and he specializes in drought-resistant landscapes and does not do that much commercial. So no, he hasn't worked for those large developers. In terms of me selling my stuff, I have not produced any films since about 2000. That's about when I left the business, long before I went on city council. I don't sell at swap meets, in case people are wondering. I sell vintage jewelry and decorative arts through my own business. And yeah, it's been cut way back since I've gone on city council, just because of the time that it takes. That's the sacrifice a lot of us make when we go and do this job, that our businesses have to suffer. I still do some shows. I do the LA Modernism Show every year in Los Angeles, the Palm Springs Modernism Show in Palm Springs, and every November I go to New York to do a show called the Piers Show. I'll be doing that again this year. That's primarily where I do the majority of my sales, including through private customers, and I've got a lot of private customers who have been buying from me for many, many years. I've had this business since about 2000, maybe even a little bit before. You seem to be very curious about my personal background. You brought it up before. That's it. So if you're trying to imply that there's some kind of wrongdoing, bring it on if you have any facts. But I think that lobbing these kinds of accusations is really, I wouldn't say beneath you, but it's certainly, to go on television and try to imply something without having any facts about anything is really just a very low thing to do, Mr. Mohill. And as someone who comes here a lot, I would hope better from you, really.